Marketing is hard. But I'll tell you a little secret. It doesn't have to be. Let me point something out. You're listening to a podcast right now, and it's great. You love the host. You seek it out and download it. You listen to it while driving, working out, cooking, even going to the bathroom. Podcasts are a pretty close companion. And this is a podcast ad. Did I get your attention? You can reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Libsyn Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a pre-produced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience in their favorite podcasts with Libsyn Ads. Go to libsynads.com, that's Libsyn, ads.com today.
Beyond cis male, cis female, non-binary, trans male, there are more.
They're swimming in like the gender soup
of different experiences.
Gender is like a marker of time. Thinking critically about what inclusion means.
So much of womanhood is tied to whiteness, is tied to thinness.
How do I identify myself? Faggot.
Non-binary.
As femme as humanly possible.
I'm a cisgender gay man.
A binary trans woman.
Theatrical and flamboyant. Dykes who identify as twinks.
A gender conscientious objector.
I just kind of forget that I have a body.
Drag helped me unlock the power of my femininity within a masculine persona.
Transitioning when you're older,
it opens up an entire world of possibilities.
I bloomed, I blossomed.
Comfortable in my physical body for the first time in my whole life.
Existing
in a more nuanced way.
In thought, in imagination, in fantasy.
My gender in my head feels like the cosmos, just fully unknowable, even to myself.
I wasn't trying to be a gender. I wasn't trying to be a race. I was trying to be a point of energy in the universe.
That's amazing.
I love that.
So I spent the last week, we're filming this like right after the election, in a silent meditation retreat, Babette.
Oh my God.
Where we didn't
You're
get
so
to hear
LA.
the election results. It was actually in the Bay, so riddle me that.
Wait. Sorry. Maybe this is an aside, but where was it in the Bay? That's so cool.
It was at Spirit Rock. It's like in Marin.
Oh.
Yeah, everyone there was from Oakland, except for like,
I'm sure.
Me.
Yes. So that's kind of crazy. So you didn't know when it happened? They didn't tell you?
No. So it was like an all queer retreat, which I was really excited about. So when I saw it advertised, I was like, great. I signed up for it, and then only later realized it was November 3rd to 8th. And I was like, oh, interesting. That's over a kind of important day.
Right.
So that was crazy. So yeah, it's like no talking, obviously, but no reading, no writing. You check your phone in when you get there. You don't have a phone. It's very like all you're doing is meditating, which is awesome. I've done like one a year for like 4 years now. So now I'm kind of like locked in. I'm like, this is great. I love to do this.
It wasn't hard for you, or is it hard every time?
It's still totally hard, but I feel like I've kind of like made peace with it, or I've like gotten to feel like the effects, you know, like I'm like, oh, this is like really deep rest. It's really beautiful, like self-care work. But this one specifically, I was like, oh my God, who's going to win the election?
Right.
And then they like announced it to us like in a little like ceremony, and we all got to kind of like talk and process together. And honestly, like missing like the back and forth and the beat by beat, like when I did turn my phone on, like at the end getting it back, like all the text messages were like, can she still win? Like, oh my gosh, this article is reporting this, you know, like the scramble. Yes. And I just kind of got broad strokes. Like it was like Trump won.
Right.
And I didn't necessarily need to know how we got there minute by minute.
Exactly.
And I kind of feel kind of like resourced and able to like just keep doing like the work that I do. And I'm not like so fatigued.
Yes. Well, no, I like that because it's kind of like obviously still politically engaged, but like stepping outside of this like fucking racket that is US politics, where it's like, is this gonna happen? Is this gonna happen? Is this gonna happen? It's just like, okay, this is now happened. It's been happening actually. And you know, the end of the world actually is already here, especially like if we're talking about other places in the world, like in Gaza, the world is over. And like, who are we just because in our privileged positions to like actually the world is already ending. So what are we doing now? I think is like a better way. I don't know. I think that feels right to me in terms of how to kind of approach things.
Yeah.
I actually had a very similar experience to you, not because I went on a meditation retreat, just because I refused to look at what was happening the night before, and I went to bed at like 10 p.m. and then woke up late as well. And whereas all my friends wake up pretty early, my friends wake up at like 5 or 6, and so I went to bed at like 10. Woke up at like 9 and was like, oh my God, he won? And all my friends who had been like watching and like texting. Yeah, exactly. They were just like, what the fuck are you? They were just like, wait, it's so funny that Babette's texting like 9 a.m. being like, oh my God, what just happened?
Like what I'd miss. What did I miss?
Wait, literally like, hey guys, what did I miss? Like, but I felt really, like you said, resourced. I felt like,
yes.
I'm just like, okay, like I heard that he was elected, and then I just like took a chill day to myself, and then I kind of moved on.
The answer is nothing. You missed nothing. Like,
no,
this is going to be 4 years of him saying the most like incendiary shit.
Exactly.
And like, if I pay attention to all of that, I will be immobile. You know what I mean? Like, I need to protect my peace. You know, yeah.
No, I'm so deeply disinvested from politics. Also, okay, whatever. I don't know if I want to get into this, but it was her. It was her fault. Like, it was her fault. Like, I don't know. Like, you're going to go to Michigan. You're going to go to these states with, like, so many Arab voters and say, I am not doing a ceasefire. Like, bitch, what happened to lying? Like, what happened to lying? Like, you've lied before. Like, even, like, I'm saying, like, even if she wasn't a horrible person and, like, what happened to just, like, lying and being
good, like, old-fashioned a politician lying to your face,
just lying to your face. But like, no, you're gonna go in people's faces and be like, fuck Gaza. It's like, bitch, that's why you lost. Like,
oh my God,
you know what I mean? Like, that's why you lost. So I'm just like, and so it wasn't even close, right? We were told it was gonna be close. We were told it was gonna be like a 4-day election counting like last time, and it's like, no, she fucking lost by a landslide because it was her fault, and she was trying to also, whatever, this is not politics, this suddenly becomes like a politics podcast, but she was trying to she was trying to appeal to a conservative voter that does not exist. Like, there was no conservative voter that was like, yeah, let me go with her, like, over Trump. Like, I feel like she was trying to do this weird balancing act thing, and I'm like, you actually should have doubled down and advocated towards the left more. And right, like, a lot of
like, okay, this is my cynical feeling on it, is I'm like, I kind of feel like the Democrats looked at two extremely polarized factions, which is like AIPAC Zionist leaning Democrats and super radical leftist Free Palestine people, and they went, which of these two people are more likely to vote for Trump? Oh, it's the AIPAC Zionists, so let's appeal to them and just hope that these like super radical liberals are like so disgusted that they couldn't vote for Trump. Right. And they'll still, who is most likely to still vote for us even if we're saying no to like the really important thing that they're holding.
Exactly.
And they made that gamble and it lost.
Deep sigh.
How much of this will we leave in?
Yeah, I know. Well, we haven't like just talked. It's always so weird. We haven't just talked you and me. So sometimes it's also just like the catching up that like friends do.
I know, it's literally just us chit-chatting. I will say, like, and not just to like toot our own horn, but having this project is like really great to come back to and be like, okay, cool. We are interviewing trans people about the trans experience. It's like really nuanced. No person is the same in this like new conservative wave that's trying to like monolith every trans person and just be like, you know, it might get pretty hairy in these next 4 years. So great to have this little project to like talk to people. Honestly, like our guest today, Nori Reed. Transition of the century.
Yeah, exactly. To talk to such amazing people, such as, looks at cue card, Nori Reed.
To be quite frank, she's so funny. I honestly think this is like the perfect episode to come back on because I'm like, she's super serious and is wanting to make a joke, which we are going to need.
No, exactly. I think she's really... No, she is serious. She's so engaged, but also, like, is so not afraid to, like, laugh at serious things and be like, what the fuck is going on? And I think she also... We kind of get into talking about, like, community, making community as trans people with non-trans people. And I think, like, that is going to be essential for any kind of coalition that we build over the next 4 years of, like, how to just, like, be in community together. And in terms of what you said about this podcast, it's like, okay, period. We come back. And the work continues, and how grateful I am to be able to do this kind of work and talk to people like Nori.
Yeah, me too.
Ew.
Boom.
Ew.
There it is.
We did it. We did it, Joe. Oh, actually, we didn't do it, Joe. Fuck.
Oh, fuck. Only you did it, Joe.
Oh, shit. We did not do it.
My name is Nori Reed, pronoun she, her. I'm a comedian and writer in Los Angeles, middle-aged trans woman. It's my newest identity. That just kind of means being tired and kind of like saying no to things and cutting things out of my life that don't serve me anymore.
Oh my God, yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
The power of tired is actually huge.
Yes. Just giving into the tired and just being like, you know what? Maybe this means that I just don't do things that I was pretending that I wanted to do.
Yup. Yes. Yup. Don't force it. How would if you were to like kind of walk us through like what it looked like to get to where you are now, what does that look like?
To be tired?
Yeah.
Let's see.
To come out as tired.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I mean, my gender and sexuality journey, I grew up in Kentucky in the church, so very, Pentecostal, like just very religious. And so definitely that was not accepted, or it wasn't something that I could really live, my truth in any way. But when I went to college, I came out and, made a little pit stop, as many trans people do. Made a little pit stop as gay first. As a gay guy. A soft launch is what I like to call it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
A soft hat.
Soft launch, yeah. And so did that, and then lived my life as a gay guy in New York. And that's when I first started really interacting with trans people in a real way, and was like, oh, wow, like I feel seen, I feel mirrored, I feel, like this feels very much more closely aligned. So then I moved to San Francisco to be a therapist and ended up dropping out of school, transitioning, and then becoming a comedian. So, yeah.
Wow. I did not know that. Yeah. That's so interesting. Do you go to therapy? And as someone who was going to be a therapist, do you have like a lens on that?
Yeah, I mean, I went to therapy off and on since I was in college. So I've been in therapy for a very long time. And during my gender journey, I definitely was in therapy and definitely needed that. I think now currently I don't. I mean, my last therapist I was with a few months ago, actually, like was whenever we stopped our sessions, she was kind of just like, you're good. she was like, you're okay.
Wow.
And I was like, because we would have, I started a new job and it would have been very challenging to reschedule. And she was kind of like, she's like, we could figure it out, or also just like, I think you're fine. She was like, I think you're
great.
She's also tired.
Yeah. She's tired.
she's like, we could. How did that feel? Was that like, oh my God, that's amazing. I'm amazing. Or like, kind of like, okay.
I mean, my first feeling was that she was lying. That I was like, okay, she's like,
right.
You know, when you get broken up with, you know, it's kind of like, hey,
yes.
like, you know, like it's not, you're amazing. Like, you're amazing.
Oh, right.
But for, you know, I think maybe like we should, you know, it's just that you're so good at being single. That we shouldn't get together.
You're actually too good.
Yeah,
for
you're
me.
too good for me. You're good at being, you're a single guy. You're a single person, and that's beautiful.
Oh my God.
So, but I think, I mean, honestly, I do think she was very much telling the truth, and I do you know, I will say a few months later, I'm just kind of like, I don't know. I feel like I might still need a therapist. Because life is crazy, and you know the world is crazy right now. So
yes,
I don't know.
Totally.
Yes. It's like I feel like I'm in a similar place where like I'm perfectly fine if nothing difficult or hard ever happens to me again. But like if something bad or hard happens, like it's all out the window.
It's a house of cards, really. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Going back to your upbringing in Kentucky, do you feel like you have moments where you like look back and are like, oh, that was a very trans thing of me to do as like a child or something? Or
I mean, I did a stereotypical, like, honestly, I don't know if it's like trans or gay. I'm not quite sure, but like the whole like using the towel as like hair.
Oh yeah.
You know, like the hairdo with the towel, and you know, kind of looking in the mirror and being like, you know, like, ooh, I look, you know, like I'm a supermodel. I don't know if that's like, I don't know if that's trans or if that's just like gay guys. I feel like gay guys do that growing up. So I'm not quite sure. I just remember, for me, it wasn't like an activity as much as just like, I have a memory of like the boys in the neighborhood would like get together and play baseball. And like my mom would like force me to like go, but I like did not want to play. And I would just remember watching them and just being like, what are those? Like, not just being so separate. Just being like, I don't get them. I don't know them. Like, they're like, I am not them and they are not me.
Right.
Like we are separate.
Yes.
And I still hate baseball to this day, which has been really hard because the Dodgers just won, and that's what everyone wants to talk about. I'm like triggered.
Such a boring sport. Such a boring fucking sport. Let's be real. I'm sorry. It's so boring.
It's so boring. The only good thing is the food, and you have to like go there for that. So I'm just like, no.
Yeah, totally. There's a photo of someone. There's a woman in front of them at Dodger Stadium Googling how long does a baseball game last. That I saw, and I was like, that is perfect. That's what it feels like.
That's amazing.
Too long.
Everyone's there being like, is it really always this long? Like,
yeah, exactly. I'm just trying to find the garlic fries and like the chicken tenders. That's all I'm there for,
exactly.
you know.
Exactly. I'm interested. So you moved to be a therapist in San Francisco. What went into you being like hard pivot comedian? I mean, they do actually feel spiritually similar, but what was that like?
I think it's care. It's like care work in different
Totally.
ways to pay attention to people's vibe,
Teasing things apart, kind of
observational.
Yes.
Well, I mean, for me, it was. It wasn't as quick as that, as I made it sound. Like I dropped out, was a little confused. Started transitioning, so got a job like working in healthcare, and which like funded my transition, and that was the center of my life. It was like transitioning, like that was like where my resources went, and that's like what I focused on. And then whenever I felt like those goals were accomplished, then it kind of was like, okay, like now what? Like, what do I focus on? What do I like? What do I want to do? You know, like it gets, you know, because transitioning is such a, you know, challenging process. It involves so many resources that now that those resources are freed up, like, you know, what am I interested in? And so I always knew I was funny. Like I was always kind of like the funny person or, you know, whatever. But there actually was this organization in the Bay Area called Peacock Rebellion. And they put on this stand-up class for trans women of color to do. So my friend was like, hey, like this was like right up your alley. Like you should do this. So I did the class. It was actually with Nava Mao, who is in Baby Reindeer.
Wow.
She was in the class with me. We were classmates.
Oh my God.
It was a great class. Like we learned so much, and it kind of accumulated into this show where at the end of the class, we did this community show at this church in Oakland. And it was like so many people. I think it was like 600 people, like a really like big, raucous, like amazing show. And I was obsessed. I was like, oh my God, I love this. This is what I want to do. And so I just started doing comedy. I like kind of switched over from this class to more of the stand-up scene in the Bay Area. It was kind of a funny transition into kind of like going from like performing just for queer people to like, you know, all people. Well, I mean, when you're performing at comedy clubs, it's like not for queer people. It's like, you know, you have to really think about your audience, and the audience is mostly like straight, cis, mostly white people. So that's an interesting piece of it. But, yeah.
Would you ever teach like a class like that in LA?
I've never thought about it.
I would take it.
I mean, listen, I mean, as I get older, I definitely am kind of like, oh, like there's like a mentoring piece of like getting older, and maybe that is something I'd be interested in. I mean, that's definitely something that I like. I'm like, ooh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like it really changed your life. And it feels like I started in LA, I started with improv, and I remember my first show. I mean, there were 15 people in the audience, very different, but I had like such a sweet teacher at UCB, and it was so like caring. And I just remember the only people that came to the show for me were all my service industry friends who worked at BJ's with me. So it was like all the other servers at BJ's coming to watch me do comedy. But I was like hooked. Like having a good first experience with like trying on kind of like your more performer side is like so healing, especially when you have other stuff kind of going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was hooked because, you know, it just like it gave me a platform and a voice, and I feel like transitioning for me was very challenging. I kind of came up against a lot of like some difficult stuff happened, and it gave me this outlet to kind of like process some of that trauma, and in a way that felt safe and like purposeful, and kind of like wow, like I can take stuff that's hard for me, and it, you know, and it can make people laugh, and it can, you know, it can be powerful. Like it doesn't have to be like something that like hurts me. It can be something that I can use to, you know, make art. And yeah.
I know one of the things that they talk about with PTSD, which I thought was so interesting from a like comedy perspective, is like if something traumatic happens to you, they tell you to talk about it with as many people as you can, because the process of you saying what happened and watching a human's face react to it is like really healing, and helps you like ground and be like, that was crazy, you know, like, oh, that shouldn't have happened to me or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, that's like literally what comedians are addicted to. It's like being like, this crazy thing happened, and everyone's like, no way, you know, and you're like high off of like getting that kind of like mirror back to you. It's like so healing.
Totally. My parents have expressed to me that their worst fear was me becoming a comedian because like whenever something would happen, I was my dad would be like, "This is going to be fodder for your comedy special or something." Because I've always similarly it's just like, you know, crazy things have happened to me, and I love to talk about it. Is the thing. I love to talk about it, and my parents were like, "This kid is going to grow up and tell everybody everything that happened to them in this house." And I'm like,
I feel like it's the opposite with my family. Like, they all are constantly pitching shit to me. Like, they're like, "This is going to end up in your stand-up set." Am I right? I'm like, "Oh, because my aunt couldn't open up the jar." I'm like, "Look, I'm not going to be talking about any of this shit." Like,
my aunt is so freaking stupid.
My
funny.
stupid fucking
My stupid aunt
even open a jar. Am I right?
Jar. And you guys know, that you guys got an aunt that can't open up a pickle jar.
Standing ovation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Speaking of parents, were you kind of able to maintain a relationship with your parents during this very kind of transitionary moment in your life of like moving to San Francisco, becoming a comedian, transitioning, all of these things?
That's definitely part of the challenges that I was talking about. It was family stuff.
Yeah.
It just, you know, I kind of, it really took a toll on a lot of my family relationships, and that was the most painful part of everything, I think, was like the family changes, for sure.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. When you were kind of in that moment of, you know, really focusing on your transition and, you know, it's difficult for all these reasons, did you kind of have any like gender role models that were kind of like guiding you where you're like, oh, this is how I kind of want to embody myself, like this person or something like that?
Oh, I've never thought about that. I mean, when I was still in New York, I was working at this like furniture store in Brooklyn, like a very like fancy, like bougie furniture store. And my boss was this trans Moroccan woman, and she was cuckoo bananas. And like, I mean, truly like made my life hell in so many ways, but she also wasn't amazing. And she like, I remember we were like taking inventory or something, and she just was like, she just like looked at me and was like, "You're trans." And I was like, "What?" And she was like, "You're trans." And I was like, "Oh," I was like, "Ha ha," like funny, like,
right,
you know. But she had like a bit of a witchiness about her, and she kind of like felt it. And then our coworker Gigi, she was a trans woman from Mexico who 100% was a witch and just like had this incredible motherly, beautiful energy, and she was very supportive. And I think like just being around them for so long before I took any steps and before I kind of made any sort of commitments, which would be years later,
right,
I got to just kind of see like, oh, like what's this life about, and like what is the reality of this, you know, like if I were to make these choices, you know, and that there's different ways of being trans. Like not all trans women are the same. Like they bring different energies and different, you know, and I think at that point of time, I was still learning so much about trans people. I think obviously the person I am now, I still don't know anything about trans people, but at the time I definitely was just learning, and it was cool to just see that there's all different types of people, and you could be chaotic evil, or lawful good, or neutral evil, or neutral good. And
I love that.
Speaking my language.
That's what we need, though. We need more, like, some trans people suck. And, like, we kind of just need to say that.
Absolutely.
Like, some trans people are a little evil, you know? And it's like, that's the representation we need. We need the insane, the evil, the good, the bad,
Absolutely.
you know? I love that.
Absolutely.
I feel like so many, specifically women that I know, like, part of what's so hard about coming out as trans is like you're really trying to see like what that life is about, and there's just so much messaging that it's like it's hard, it's bad, it's deathly. Like, what was it like for you to come to terms with like, and I'm still gonna take this step because this is who I am? Were there like tools that helped you through that, or still do?
That's such a great question. Yeah, I think before I started transitioning, it was such a like laborious kind of like, it felt like a tortured kind of decision. And I think for me, the final push was I just couldn't imagine a future like on the path that I was on. Like, I just couldn't see myself older. Like, I was like, who is that person? Like, I don't even know them. I don't understand, and I was like, I just couldn't even connect with the path that I was on because it was, in some ways, inauthentic. And, that was the push for me. It was like, I just really want to, even if it's a difficult life and even if it's a hard life, at least it will feel like lived in,
Totally.
So, yeah, I think that's what was important for me, was just like, I really do want to live authentically. And, that it's so cliche, but I think what really does inspire a lot of trans people to start transitioning is just like, I want to participate in life, I want to I want to be a part of it. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
The word lived in is so
cool.
The way you describe that. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Saying all that, no one transition. It's so bad. I'm kidding. It's good. It's okay. It's fine. Yeah. It's not that. And now that I have met the older person, she sucks. Oh my God. No, I'm kidding. I can't be it's hard for me to be too earnest as a comedian.
I know.
I can't do it. So unfortunately I'm going to have to say stuff.
It's like as soon as we said like that was really beautiful, you just like threw a bomb right at it. You're like, I have to.
Say?
I'm sorry.
Fuck.
Don't do it. It's just a phase. And then we cut the episode.
No, definitely transition.
I was like kind of making myself laugh because I was just like, and it's such a hard life. I'm just like, no, these are some of the kind of like messages that get in there. Obviously, it's not, just some like tortured hard
It is
life.
Also hard.
It is also hard. Yeah.
It's hard. I will say it is hard. And I do think like with a lot of trans women, when we get together and talk with just amongst ourselves in our little meetings, that does come up of like, wow, this is hard. And I never could have anticipated how challenging it is, but it is also so rewarding. And so it's both. And
totally.
I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to acceptance of just like, this is who I am. So there's not really a choice. It's not kind of like, oh, let me mitigate the hardness of this. We can't, because it's who we are. We're going to just be who we are. Trans people are going to be trans people because we have no other choice. It's really about society being a better place for trans people to live in and to survive in. And that's what the issue is that society makes it such a horrible, horrible place for trans people to exist in. And that's the real issue, obviously.
Yeah, totally. It feels like it gets a little bit better each generation, but it's also just kind of crazy to imagine it being completely easy, which is kind of like a dour thing to say. Yeah. But yeah, it's...
I can't wait for hormones in the water supply.
That's happening.
I want hormones. I want 20 milligrams of Lexapro and 5 milligrams of Adderall in the water supply at all times. And I'm telling you, everything would be fine.
Everyone just singing "Proud to be an American" in the streets.
Yeah, exactly.
With it being hard, and I'm like interested in kind of like tools or rituals or I don't know, things that you've done that have kind of like helped you feel like grounded and kind of like refill your cup in this way to kind of like keep pushing, even if that is just like trans girl meetups, the secret meetings.
I mean, I definitely have an inherent sense of, I've always kind of had a survivor kind of instinct. I think it's kind of like in my family lineage, and it's like there's a lot of like survivors in my family and people who've endured a lot of hard stuff. So I think that's kind of like in my DNA. As Shawn Mendes said, it's in my blood. He's kind of what keeps me going. It's kind of Shawn Mendes. If I feel really down, or if I feel like things aren't going well, I kind of just pop on a Shawn Mendes song, and it's like, call me señorita, and then I feel better. But besides Shawn Mendes and my family lineage, community is so important. I think like just connecting with like other trans people, kind of like what you were saying about trauma, like just being like, this is crazy and this is really hard, and it sucks when this happens and it sucks when that happens, and also we're amazing, and just reminding each other how special we are and how magical we are is always really good, because I feel like trans people are kind of just like gaslit on such a macro level of like not seeing ourselves in the media and around us, and like the messaging. Like I watched, I was like in a office space and they had the World Series on, so I was not watching by consent. It was on the screen, but there was this horrible anti-trans ad that was played during the World Series that was literally was just like explicitly about hating trans people. What? And it was an advertisement for the World Series against trans people. Crazy. And I was just like, that's insane. That's actually
like spending money on that.
That's our reality. Like what did
it look like? What was the vibe?
Yeah, I mean, it was an attack ad on Kamala Harris, and it essentially was like Kamala Harris wants trans people to XYZ, wants trans people
except she doesn't.
And that's what makes it so much worse. Is like they go to Kamala and they're like, "Do you support trans people?" And she's like, da, ba, da, da, da. You know, she's like,
that's the thing to talk about with your doctor, I guess.
And so it's just, I feel like to live in that reality as a trans person and have to go to work and just pretend like, and just to like live your everyday life while you know that like that's the level of hatred that's happening. It's just like, whoa, like it's real, and we don't need to. And I feel like we have to gaslight ourselves just to even like. Sorry, gaslight was the wrong word. We have to like just cope.
No, I know what you mean. Be like, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, just be like, oh, it's okay. Actually, it's not that bad. But
yeah, so I feel like just being with other trans people and going, this is bad, and this is like really crazy that this is happening. I think just makes you feel like you're not like imagining it. Yeah,
totally. I feel like some of the stuff like Trump has said about like aliens coming here to go to prison to transition or whatever the fuck that like insane like clip was, it does kind of feel like things are progressing. And then this is like a negative reaction to seeing that progress is inevitable is my like positive read on this. But I mean, I think that's me like convincing myself to keep doing the work and like connecting and stuff like that, or like that has to be my worldview. Because my partner works with kids, and it's like so many non-binary kids. There's so much more language around it. It does just seem kind of like there's like a new wave coming each few years, you know, of like transliteracy or something.
No, the girls are scared. That's what's happening. The Republican girls are scared. That's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, and it's important to remember too that for myself, like that when I see stuff like that, it's such a, even though it is so real, it also isn't in a way, in terms of like, what I mean by that is, even if I were to go to Florida or whatever, and like, but like, it's weird that like the majority of people who even would have those politics, if they were just sitting down with me, that would treat me like a decent person. It's just so crazy how even with the hatred and the bigotry of it, when we put in media and technology and create these like other levels of interaction and communication. I don't know how to quite articulate what I'm trying to say. When it's just like a person with a person, I do believe that people are kind of like good. You know, it's like when you take away the people with power and the money and them, because obviously we're political footballs. People use trans people as political objects. It's not even about us.
Yes.
It's just interesting how when you just put people in a room, like, they're probably going to just respect each other. It's, you know, it's just, it's weird.
Totally.
Yeah.
If you were in a crowd of people who hold transphobic beliefs, but one person said something loud that was transphobic at you, the other people would stand up for you. Like, it's there's still human decency going on there that is really crazy. Yeah.
It's really fascinating, like that kind of human behavior where you can hold those politics that are so like hateful, and then but in your you know, that's such a disconnect because the personal is political, obviously, and it is such a disconnect there. But I did a show recently in Philadelphia, and it was at a comedy club. So there were people who came to the club who were just looking for comedy. They didn't know who was performing, and it was fascinating because pretty much up top, like, you know, this guy kind of was like, I'm a Republican. And I was like, okay, well, I was like, I hope you laugh. Like, I hope you have, and he laughed the entire time. He was having the time of his goddamn life. And I hope he left there being like, oh, like, you know, trans people are clowns. And should not be taken seriously in any way. No, I hope that he, you know, obviously, like, that made him think because he was having a great time. And I was like, you know, I don't know.
The percentage of people who claim to know a trans person personally is crazy low. Yes. So I think that's also
the issue.
You know?
Yes.
That's the issue. It's like, and I think if we put hormones in the water supply, we could really speed that up.
We could change that. We could make things happen. Yeah. No, I know what you mean, though. I think it's also the idea of, like, in whatever future I imagine, I don't necessarily want to leave my, like, transphobic mom behind. You know what I mean? Like, how can we have this future that, like, is, because I feel like there's like a lot of like scholars who write about this, but like kind of like the like some of the like queer movements in the 90s, like kind of like mall takeover type like vibes are very much like, we're queer, like fuck the hetero family structure, but then like there are kind of these more like intersectional like activists of color who are more like, oh no, but we actually need to bring those transphobic people and families like with us too, right? Like in like our quote unquote revolutionary future. So I've definitely been thinking about that, where it's just like, no, I mean, I think in a fucked up weird way, like we gotta make it work with people, especially like I'm thinking like, you know, working class folks, like I don't know, like we gotta make it work. Like it's we can't, I think, leave those people behind, which I think is hard,
like living in the Bay Area, that was such a lesson for me of like, I feel like it's such a queer person of color perspective of like inclusion, and I think like I definitely that was such a like update for me of like of a way of thinking of like, oh wow, like social movements, you can include people who hold very many different beliefs. You know, I feel like it's kind of like a white patriarchy thing to like to be like, if you don't believe what I believe, then you're not a part of this.
You're either with us or against us. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like I feel like that was such an education for me living in Oakland of like, because I started connecting with radical Korean community and learning from them, and they're socialists and leftists, and just like, wow, like a social movement needs to be inclusive of everyone. Yeah. And that's kind of what I was trying to articulate, is that like when it comes to like actually interacting with people, they don't give a fuck if you're trans. It doesn't matter. Like if you're like, no, it's like exactly. Who the fuck cares? Like it's like if we're all struggling to pay rent, we're all like, it's and just seeing those movements in real life, like when you see it in real life at like events, or it's so beautiful because you're just like, whoa, like, and honestly, kind of horny.
Yeah.
A little horny because you have some trade. You do have some kind of like some steel workers there, and you're kind of like, oh, like, you know, hi, you know.
Hey there.
So
the revolution is horny.
It's horny. The revolution is so horny. I feel like because like, you know, the powers that be, like, that's very not horny. That's like death, decay.
No.
Not sexy.
I just went to trade school here, like in LA, and I do feel like I met so many people who are like straight up like thin blue line stickers on their hard hats, but like so normal. And it's like they don't have all the like kind of like, you know, kind of like tender queer majority white what to say, what not to say training. And so they're like, hey, are you a guy or a girl?
No, but I fuck with that
more. And you're like, well, you know,
I prefer let's get, that.
Like,
I just don't know. I feel
it's more honest.
That. I prefer that.
It's more reasonable.
I'm tired of the teddy queers.
That to
I love
me
it.
is
it's
another.
Normal.
That feels very racial to me. Like, I feel like the people that made the rules. I feel so strongly about this. I don't like that the people who made the rules about trans engagement were white people, because it's literally like you can't.
It's about politeness.
About don't ask that. You can't ask that. If you want to interact with a trans person, it's got to be this way. And they created a dynamic with non-trans people of fear and of like whatever. And like it's like, oh, it's disrespectful if you even like whatever. And obviously everything's in balance. Everything's gray. There is no black and white in the world in terms of like ideas and whatever. Yeah. And so I just like, but I just don't like that like. We've created this situation where it's kind of like, if you want to interact with a trans person, read this 200-page book about, and it's like, I think it's made things a little worse, to be honest.
Totally.
I agree. I like that you bring up like Oakland as kind of this example of like just different people having to live together, because like I think that's just one of those places where you just like see it so much on the ground. Like my neighborhood, it's like formerly used to be a black neighborhood, but now it's mostly like Chinese and Viet, as long as my parents have lived there. And it's like people, you just have to live together. Like my whole block, like we're like the only non-Asian folks like on my block. And like the media would have you kind of think like stoking these like, you know, black and Asian like tensions. But it's like, no, we all mind our business. And like what's super interesting is because of gentrification, a lot more trans people have been moving into the neighborhood, which is like a new interesting dynamic. Sorry, not to equate trans people with gentrification, but it is kind of what's happening. It's like real. A very interesting...
Real. It's complicated.
It's like, it's part of it. It's what's happening. But what's so interesting is like my ex like lived around the corner from my parents' house, and like she's like a trans woman, and I was like so nervous to introduce her to my parents because I was just like, I don't really know. But like as soon as I just brought her over and was just like normal and chill about it, it's like my mom and her would watch like the Diane Warwick documentary together. Like they were just like it's just like connected about like music or whatever. And so like it is this very interesting thing where like I know some trans folks who've moved to my parents' neighborhood now, but like they're like fucking with like the like Vietnamese auntie on the corner. Like everyone's chill, you know? And I do think like, I think it is kind of like, oh yeah, we all, because most of these people are also like working class, right? Or like, if anything, maybe like middle class, but it's like, there is something about just like, I think like getting over yourself. I think that is like
and
really
a lot
good,
of like I feel like a lot of elders in these communities that we're talking about, they really do ultimately see trans people as kind of like artists or like creatives, or kind of like they associate transness with like being different. And I feel like that there is some like ancestry to that. Like obviously like in a lot of different cultures, trans people were in their communities spiritual leaders, creative leaders, things like that. And I feel like there is kind of like a history and a lineage of like trans people being different. And I think that is another part of whiteness in trans culture of like, we're normal. We're normal, and we're just like you. We're just like you. We deserve to be bank tellers and farm. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be a bank teller. It's like we get to be an office assistant. I don't want to just have a like you.
Yes.
It's like, no, bitch. We were never supposed to be office assistants. We were like spiritual leaders, and now it's kind of like, no, like we have every right to you know, to be an account
to get
executive.
married. It's like gay marriage.
Literally.
Like, it's like this kind of normie like pull. But so
I feel like with older generations, like they do see trans people as different, and that's okay. Like it's okay that we're different. Like I don't know. It's
I'm advocating for trans unemployment. I do not want to.
But I think about that. These are things that I think about a lot, which is just like the way that as trans people we have to fit into society as a mode of survival. It is a survival need to pay rent, to buy groceries, and what does that mean having a job? And it's just so funny to me that like justice in our society is like trans people having the right to be like boring and like normal, and it's just so sad and so like I don't know. That's why I do feel very blessed and lucky to be a comedian, because it's like I do get to have a career where I worked in a lot of offices and I never could do it. Like I just could not do it. Spiritually could not do it.
Me too.
So
yeah.
Now you get to have this job, kind of like what you were talking about, where you're just like thinking and calling things into question and just being your own visible self. Like I'm sure that's worthy of a check from the government, I think, monthly, to be quite honest.
Absolutely. This is pivoting a little bit, but could you tell us about some of your writing for TV?
Yes. After saying all that working class stuff, I do have a lot of money. And I will, and that is, I do feel like, that was a gotcha moment. You said, hey, sorry, if I could just ask this really quick. You talked a lot about working class stuff. And you actually are fucking rich.
So you write for TV, right?
Interesting. So we're talking about union workers, kind of stuff like that.
You said steel workers. Is that from experience?
Yes, exactly.
And I do want to say you were talking about radical Korean community, and you work on the Paramount lot. And I do have that note right here. It says you just bought a new Subaru in cash.
Yeah.
How is that? How did you do that?
Oh my god.
We actually have your receipts right here. Wait, also a dream.
That was a dream come true. I literally at the dealership, I got it. I'm so thrifty, and because I'm an immigrant, I literally my mom's an immigrant. I could never buy a new car. Just I can't do it, and so it's a ripoff. So this was a used car with 500 miles on it. So it was the perfect oh my God, I saved so much money. It makes me so happy. But in my old car, which I had for 10 years, it was this old rundown car, but I didn't have a car payment. So I was let me just keep this going.
Yes.
But it started breaking. Anyways, the point is, in the console, the center console, we were clearing it out to put my stuff in the Subaru. And there were just 2 checks in there that I had forgotten about, 2 checks, for residuals. And the way that man looked at me, I went, oh, I was I didn't even know I had these. And he was are those checks? And I was oh, yeah, sorry. And he was the way that Alan from Subaru DCH Riverside, that working class man looked at me with disgust. And he
you had some checks you forgot about?
Are you rich?
Yeah.
And I was no. Well, I was it's complicated. I was not really, but because it's you never know when the next paycheck is going to come. So it's kind of confusing because it's a lot of money, but then you don't know. I didn't work for a year and a half before this last job. He was shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Right. He's oh.
He's you bought a used Subaru and you have checks you forgot to cash.
You have checks that you just forgot about? What the fuck? It's also, what makes it even funnier is that when I opened the console, it would just look like a bunch of trash. I was oh, good, let's just toss it. And he's the one who picked up the checks. He's the one who found the checks and went, what?
Oh my God.
So yeah, I'm for the people, not of the people, and that is hard. Right. That is hard for everyone involved.
That's beautiful. That's politics, baby.
I'm trans, and being rich is radical. That is a radical act of resistance.
Exactly. Your existence is
when I go to Erewhon. That's inclusion. That's taking up space.
My cheeks hurt from laughing so much. Oh my god.
What was the question?
Well, it was just a pivot to if you could talk about some of your writing for TV. More specifically, what does good trans representation in TV look like?
Oh, that's a really that is a very good question. So my first writing job was working for a show called Raven's Home on the Disney Channel, and so Raven in the reboot, Raven starts to open up a design studio because it's one of her big dreams. She's always wanted to be a designer, and so she opens up the design studio in the loft of the Chill Grill. I don't know. Are you guys familiar with Raven at all? Okay.
Oh. That
Okay,
was like
good.
my
Okay.
queer, awakening. Love
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in the reboot, above the Chill Grill, that is Raven's design studio, and we needed her to have a fashion, like an assistant. And so I was like, that's an amazing opportunity for a queer or and/or trans character, because we got fashion. We know that queer people are in fashion, and this would be a great opportunity to have a trans character. So I pitched it. I was like, okay, we have a trans assistant. Who is this person? She's bad at her job. Because like we were talking about earlier, trans people have the right to have all sorts of representation in media. And I feel like, white people get to do that. Cis people get to do that. They get to have characters that are multidimensional, flawed, whatever. And I really want that for trans characters. I want trans characters that kind of suck, that aren't good at one thing, that are just human, that are very human. And so I pitched someone who is a little out of touch. She's an heiress. She doesn't really need the job, but her dad's making her work for her trust fund. So this is the best thing she came up with. And so, created this trans character. It was the first live action trans character for the Disney Channel. And which felt really special for me because I grew up watching the Disney Channel and just as a kid in Kentucky, and it was kind of like, whoa, like we do have progress. And it's so cool because Disney they were so excited. It's like they weren't even I was expecting a fight, pushback, and there was literally they were just like, this is great, let's do it. And so that was really cool.
Did you feel like there was pushback about any unlikable characteristics in a trans character?
There was not pushback. I think there was caution of just like, hey, do you know what you're doing? Just want to make sure you know what you're doing. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Because I love writing characters that ride that line where you're still rooting for them. They're always going to be likable. And the thing about characters is the characters we root the most for are unlikable. We root the most for characters that stand in their own way, that self-sabotage. Those are the characters that really we love because every episode isn't more of an adventure. They bring excitement and adventure through their human kind of flaws. So I really wanted to do that. One interesting part of it was we really needed to have a disclosure moment. The person needed to say that they were trans. So I wanted to keep that disclosure moment in the Disney Channel universe. I wanted it to be funny and light and nothing. I didn't want the tone to shift and then shift back.
Right.
And the way that we did that was we had a moment where the character's name is Nikki. She's kind of complaining to Raven and going on about being different and how she's treated different, how society doesn't see her, whatever. And then Raven takes that moment and goes, oh my God, Nikki, I don't see you any differently just because you're trans. I think you're amazing. All this kind of heartfelt moment. And then being able to undercut it by Nikki saying, I was talking about being an heiress. Not being trans. What? I'm talking about
totally.
you guys don't get me because I'm an heiress. What?
Yeah, totally.
Of course, I don't have any issues with me being trans. What are you talking about? And it was such a fun moment. And I loved that it stayed in the tone of a silly Disney Channel show.
Yes. Yeah. That's so fun. It is. I feel like some of the projects that I've worked on when we're including new characters, differently abled characters, different gender spectrum, we also sometimes will get pushback from people writing about the show or talking about the show where they're like, I can't believe, like, I understand the idea around like early Disney movies where there were like all these gay coded villains. It's like, that is very annoying. But also when you're talking about from like a standpoint of like, what is a good story? There has to be conflict. And so you can't have nothing bad happen to a trans person ever again, because that's not how story works. Like, you want to watch stuff happen. So yeah, I love that point about letting trans characters be human and not having their transness be some sort of like crazy shield keeping them from any sort of human experience.
Kind of like we were talking about in real life too, like not having the shield, not them being like untouchable in this way, right? It's like, I think, it makes for good television because that's like, I feel like what life is like basically, or should be.
Yes, that's such a good point. It's about It is about, because like we watch TV to connect with like characters and like thus ourselves. And if you're saying like this trans character is different and you won't understand, like it's very specific. And I think like we want to make TV stories like human stories and stories that anyone can connect with. And I think trans narratives are so easy to connect with because it's about like wanting to live authentically and be who you are. But even I think that's such a like entry level one, but I think also just about like family and about like I don't know, I just feel, I guess what I'm saying is like my experiences as a trans woman, when I try to write about them on paper, it's kind of just like, yeah, these are very like, these are things that anyone relates to. We all want to be happy and connect with people and feel loved and included. That's you know?
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Oh, that's so cool that you got to write for the Disney Channel. I think that's so special.
Yeah.
I think that would be healing. That sounds kind of healing in a way. Because like you're getting to kind of control what like younger, like I did like when I was angsty in college, I did like a weird like video installation where I was trying to trace kind of the moment that I realized I was queer. And like, those shows like That's So Raven were so, like I literally like I took old clips of That's So Raven and then also put clips of when like Raven was like, I'm not a lesbian. Remember that funny weird era or whatever? But like, it's just like, imagine if there was like a trans or like a queer character on Disney when we were growing up. Like, I feel like I like made myself in the image of Raven because she was a Black girl in San Francisco and I was in Oakland, with these like quirky parents and everything. So it's so powerful. It's so cool.
Thank you.
That you can do that for like the next generation.
I did feel that way. And, I don't have it. I don't.
Yeah. Keep it earnest. Keep it earnest. Keep it earnest.
I'm gonna detransition.
Anyway, it's stupid. It's stupid, and it's not that cool. And if you really think about it, it's dumb.
Was there anything that we didn't talk about, Nori, that you wanted to talk about?
I mean, I do this show called Transit Girls with my friend and comedian Hayden Johnson, and
yes, Hayden.
Yeah, and if anyone's listening, come to a show. They're so fun. We have such a good time. That show was born out of our desire to have a show for trans people. And like, because so much of comedy, like I was talking about kind of earlier, it's kind of like, oh, I'm going to be performing for a bunch of cis people and I have to know that. And I think we were like, what if we had a show where like, we unapologetically made this for trans people, and people who are not trans can come and enjoy it because it's so funny, but it's not actually for them.
Right.
And that was kind of really important to us. And it's so fun, so silly, so stupid. We play games with our guests, and they're always so just so silly. Yeah, and just check out my comedy. I mean, I'm always performing, and on my Instagram, I always put up the flyers on my stories. So just follow me on Instagram. Check out when I'm performing. But yeah,
cute. Okay, great,
amazing.
Thank you so much for doing this show, Nori.
Thank you. This was so fun.
Gender Spiral is an original podcast from Audiation. This episode was mixed by Matt Noble, and music is composed by CMD plus Jasmine, courtesy of Molten Heart, with art by Joey Hahn and graphics by Michael Tyrone Delaney. The show is executive produced by Ireland Meacham, myself, Babette Thomas, my co-host, Allie Beardsley, and Sandy Smullins, with additional story editing from Susie Armitage.
Thank you so much to Nori Reed. You can find her on Instagram at Nori Reed.
If you like the show, please head over to patreon.com/genderspiralpodcast to support us. You can also check us out at genderspiralpod.com, where you'll find transcripts for each episode and a link to leave us a voicemail.
And follow us on Instagram. It's at Gender Spiral. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss a new episode. They're coming out every other week.
Audiation.